All right, we're live.
All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. This is Two Beards and a Bible. I'm John Swaino.
I'm Dave Tenney.
And we are here in John chapter 7, continuing where we left off in our thoughts from before. So, John chapter 7, starting at verse 10. I have that right?
Yes, you do.
And Dave's going to read for a little while.
Yeah, I'm just going to read till I stop.
Let's do
so
that.
I'm not sure how far I'm going to go.
I'll listen until you stop.
Okay. It says, but when his brothers had gone up, he also went up to the feast, not openly, but as it were a secret, as it were in secret. Then the Jews sought him at the feast and said, where is he? And there was much complaining among the people concerning him. Some said, he is good, and others said, no. On the contrary, he deceives the people. However, none of them spoke openly of him for the fear of the Jews. So I'll stop there. We'll talk about that little section there.
All right.
So his brothers go up to the feast, and Jesus, we saw he travels through a different way, and we talked about that last week where the people were saying, "Oh no, I'm going to follow you," and he tells them about putting their hand to the plow, and you can't look back if you're going to become a disciple of Jesus. So now Jesus is at Jerusalem. And he's kind of incognito, and he's kind of listening to what the people are saying.
Mm-hmm.
And what are they saying?
Not good things.
No, some good maybe.
Right. In verse 13 there, no one spoke openly of him for fear of the Jews.
Kind of reminds me of like I've had this situation at work, like there's something going on at work, and like everybody's talking about it, but nobody's talking about it.
Right.
Like somebody will come in your office and say, "Oh, did you hear about such and such?"
Right.
And you'll get like 8 people that'll do that to you.
It's one of the things that I have a lot of trouble dealing with is beating around the bush, and people do those things. Not that I've probably been guilty of it myself in the past, but that tends to grate at me.
Yeah.
When people talk behind each other's backs.
Yeah.
It's not the way to be. It's certainly not the way Christians should be.
No, and that's kind of what's going on here. Everybody's kind of course, maybe I use that example at work. Maybe something bad's going to happen, and nobody wants to
face it.
Yeah, nobody wants to face that thing. So
it's human nature.
Yeah. So that's kind of what's probably going on there. In verse 14 it says, now about the middle of the feast, Jesus went up into the temple and taught. And the Jews marveled, saying, how does this man know letters, having never studied? I guess I did some studying on this, and I guess it was like the practice of a lot of the scribes. They would have like a place in the temple where they always went to. Like they'd sit down on this one area, and then they'd have like disciples. The scribes would have their own disciples, and they would teach, daily.
Mm-hmm. And again, we keep coming back to human nature here. What has mankind done with religion? When you think about, we have the Lord's Church that started in the 1st century, and then ever since then, there have been things that have been where people have gone awry. And what have they done with themselves in such situations? Mankind has elevated themselves to the point where you can't learn anything. You didn't learn it from me. Yeah, and those same things, even yet happen today.
You think about the Catholic Church. For how many years they had the scriptures in a language that nobody else could understand.
Right.
So, they were the only ones. They had like a monopoly on the Bible.
And that Gutenberg that started to print for the common man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that was kind of a thing, and people were just expected to believe whatever the Catholic Church said. Well, it's just, the Jews were the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, he says, and the Jews marveled, saying, how does this man know letters, having never studied? That was a tight-knit group.
Yeah.
The Jews that were the teachers all knew each other.
Yeah. It's high-mindedness. It's one of the things that many times the church is accused of. As think of people that have never grown up with any kind of time in their life going to church or learning anything of the scriptures. A lot of times, what they see is this kind of a mentality where there are those that have elevated themselves and it then chases away those that might want to learn something.
Yeah.
And it's something for us to think about. That's great. It ought not to be in the Lord's church, but it could be, because the Lord's church is made up of human beings.
Oh yeah, exactly. I was studying. I've been reading this book by my seventh cousin wrote it. I picked it up there at the Medina congregation. There were these books by this guy named Merrill C. Tenney, and Tenney's my last name. I thought, cool. It's a relative. And then I actually did some genealogy research. I'm like, oh, this is my seventh cousin, twice removed. But he's writing in this book, and he's talking about the Maccabean revolt.
Okay.
And what had happened is like during that time, so this will be the period in between the testaments, that some of the more, I guess, politically connected Jews were letting like some things happen in like worship. They were letting like pagan worship kind of infiltrate, temple worship and all of these things, and all of these other people who were, I guess the Maccabees, they would be more like they were more Puritan, I guess, in their religion. And a lot of people would say that's where the Pharisees actually started, was right then.
Okay.
But that they had rebelled against all of these people who were in the know. The quote unquote supposedly more learned people.
Right.
And that's where Pharisee, the word Pharisee, that root word means to separate. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what they did. They were definitely more strict and more along the lines.
Yeah.
Or along what it should be. They just gone too far with it.
Yeah. And we see time and time again. I don't think you can read the scriptures and understand Christ and God the Father without understanding that He is no respecter of persons, that He desires that all men come to the knowledge of truth, and that there is no hierarchy as mankind has established in their own groups, and there is only God, and then
everybody's underneath Him.
Right. So it's but it is befuddling when you think about it, how many times this cycle has gone through humanity and recorded history.
Yeah. We're all on the same level. Mm-hmm. Whether it's the preacher or the old lady sitting in the back pew.
A lot of times the old lady sitting in the back pew knows a whole lot more than the preacher. I can tell you that.
Yeah, amen. I have had that. I've gotten to give it a lesson, and some 80-year-old lady will come and say, you misquoted such and such, or you took such and such out of its context. Here's what it really means. Oh.
Yeah, and thankful for each and every one of those people.
Absolutely. We need that.
Yeah.
Verse 16. So Jesus is teaching, and they asked him. It says the Jews marveled, saying, "How does this man know letters, having never studied?" And Jesus answered them and said, "My doctrine is not mine, but His who sent me. If anyone wills to do His will, he shall know concerning the doctrine whether it is from God, or whether I speak on my own authority. He who speaks from himself seeks his own glory, but he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. Did not Moses give you the law? Yet none of you keeps the law. Why do you seek to kill me?" Let's stop there. Man, that's a mouthful right there. Mm-hmm. But there's some like super important stuff that he says here. I like verse 17. And let's see if we can unwrap this.
All right.
It says, if anyone wills to do his will. What's that? What's he talking about there?
If you've got the mindset to follow after the Lord,
Yes.
to follow after God's will.
Yeah, if you're a person who wants to follow after God,
Your will and His will are
right?
the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then he says, he shall know concerning the doctrine. So this is the doctrine that Jesus is teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's saying if you're from God, if your will is aligned with Him, then this doctrine that I'm teaching,
It's going to sound familiar.
yeah,
It's going to ring a bell
yeah,
because all of the Old Testament looks forward to Christ. And if you are a person of God back then, you will have read the scriptures. You'll be able to recognize that, you know what, this is what it's been talking about all this time.
yes.
Yeah.
He says, he shall know concerning this doctrine that he's teaching, whether it is from God or whether I speak on my own authority.
Yeah. Yeah. And the next statement qualifies that. He who speaks, in verse 18, he who speaks from himself seeks his own glory, but he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. Now, you can tell very quickly when someone is just out there to puff themselves up. When you look at the religious world, as we've already kind of looked, you just forget that. Just any place, even in the workplace. You know, if someone is looking to puff themselves up, it's noticeable. You'll start to see, to go back to the religious world, you see those that are, Joel Osteen, he's just such an easy person to talk about in this situation because you can see, if your eyes are open, you're reading the scriptures and you're comparing what he says to what it says, there's something wrong there.
Yes.
And it's noticeable.
Yeah. I like at the beginning, he said, in verse 16, he says, my doctrine is not mine.
Yeah.
Jesus is not trying to puff himself up.
Right.
He says, but it's the one who sent me. So then when he goes on forward, like he said, he who speaks from himself speaks his own glory.
Right.
He already said in the beginning, he goes, that's not what I'm doing.
Right. If it was his own glory, he wouldn't have submitted himself to all the things that he had to go through.
He wouldn't have said, my doctrine is not mine either. He would have said, hey, listen, my doctrine is this, this, and this.
Right.
Right.
And he had every right to say that the doctrine was his.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning was the Word was God, the Word
was with God, yep.
In the first flesh and dwelled among us.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, he says, in 19, so this is where it gets a little bit interesting. So I'm just going to go ahead and John's coughing, so that's why I'm doing all this reading. I'm going to read 19 through 24 because this is all kind of one thought, or at least it is in my mind. He says, "Did not Moses give you the law? Yet none of you keeps the law. Why do you seek to kill me?" Then the people answered and said, "You have a demon. Who is seeking to kill you?" Now, I got to stop there because they were trying to kill him. So
Yeah.
if you think back, in fact,
All that murmuring and the backbiting.
oh yeah,
That's exactly what that was about.
if we go back to John chapter 5, so here's he heals the guy on the Sabbath. And I think this is what he's referring to. So he heals this guy on the Sabbath, and the Jews are really upset about it, and they seek the guy out, and they find his parents. Mm-hmm. And they're like, did this happen? And the parents are like, well, we don't know. Here's our son. He's of age. Why don't you ask him? Because they didn't want to upset anybody.
And he had already told them.
He already told him once.
Yeah.
And then verse 18 there, it says, "Therefore the Jews sought all the more to kill him, because he had not only broke the Sabbath, but also said that God was his father, making himself equal with God." Is not murder against the old law?
Right. Right. Yeah, it's all you can do is shake your head.
Yeah. So the Jews were seeking to kill him because it says that.
Yeah, and we see this in society today when the truth starts to come out and someone someone's phony baloney position in the world is at stake, they then turn it around and say, "Well, you must be crazy."
Yes.
And it's right out of the playbook of humanity.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, yeah, the people answered and said, "You have a demon. Who is seeking to kill you?" Jesus answered and said, "I did one work." And he's talking about giving that blind guy, healing him. He says, "And you all marvel. Moses therefore gave you circumcision, not that it is from Moses, but from the fathers. And you circumcise a man on the Sabbath." Now, this is I did some studying on this, and this, I think this is the point he's trying to make. You know, that they had to circumcise a baby on the 8th day, and if that fell on the Sabbath, it was okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, circumcising, I guess, requires you to do some work, right? Yeah, the hard part's on the baby.
Right.
Certainly. He says, but I think that's what he's talking about. He says, "Moses therefore gave you circumcision, not as from Moses, but from the fathers, and you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. If a man receives circumcision on the Sabbath, so that the law of Moses should not be broken, are you angry with me because I made a man completely well on the Sabbath?"
Right.
He's just contrasting, you know, what he did with what they do.
And I think he's trying to also, as always, try to make people think. And because we fall into the same trap today, many times when we get our check boxes and I have to do this because it says so in the scriptures, and I have to do this because it says so in the scriptures, but we also have to think about why, and think about what the purpose behind that is, and understanding that, you know, if we're on our way into the services of the church, and you know it starts at 10:30, and it's 10:25, and our neighbor's about to fall off of a cliff. Do we go and save our neighbor so he doesn't fall off the cliff, or do we say, "I'm sorry, I've got to preach in 5 minutes"?
Yeah,
exactly. And it's just, I think he's trying to not only foreshadow the new law, which is going to do away with all these things that have been steeped in for years, and also forcing them to kind of look and think outside the box a little bit.
I've used this example for my buddy Dan. One of his sons, he's got a son who's in his 30s. One of his son's friends who's got a family, they have one vehicle, and the car broke, and he had to be work Monday morning. And Dan went to his house and fixed his car and missed church services.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with that.
I was on the way. We were on the way to services some time ago, and a mutual friend of ours was broken down on the side of the highway, and I noticed it as I went past across the 4-lane highway. I noticed, well, hey, that's so and so, and the thought, you know, goes through my mind as I pass him. I'm like, well, do I have time to go back and help him?
No, you do.
And I'm thinking, wait a minute. And so I called him on the phone and asked him, and he already had help on the way. But I thought of that at that time, that, you know, I actually thought, do I have time to go back and help him?
Yeah.
Because I have a place to be, you know, and it was church services, which I was teaching.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I mean, the brethren would have understood.
Yeah.
And things might have had to get started a little bit later, but again, I think that's what Christ is trying to teach us to do, is to think logically.
Yeah.
The scriptures are logical.
Yeah, and I think we tend to, and it's so easy to become like the Pharisees,
Mm-hmm.
and like start making these rules up that don't exist in the Bible.
Right.
And then like trying to bind others to them.
Right.
You know, it's, you know,
it's human nature. We like our check boxes. We like our rigidity. You know, I like to get up and get moving the same way every morning. My daughter has to have chocolate cereal in the morning, or the world comes crashing to an end. You know, we are creatures of habit.
Yeah.
And we have to fight against that to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, it's am I telling you that you should just skip church services for any reason? No, I'm not saying that at all.
And being the first day of the week, there is the command to come together.
There is.
And so that has to happen. But when you come across an emergency situation where someone might be even in danger, I mean, this highway that this friend of ours was on was not a safe place to be.
Yeah.
And so you to think.
You have to do. I mean, you can 99% of the time you can do what you need to do to help your fellow man, and do what you need to satisfy what God has commanded us to do. It's not typically impossible to do both.
Right.
You know.
Right.
But that's kind of what Jesus is talking about. You know. So this law was he didn't, you know, healing this man on the Sabbath. There was nothing wrong with that. There was nothing wrong with that at all. He says,
I mean, just simply because it was Christ.
Right. Yeah. But, you know, he says, do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment.
Yeah.
And that just shows that things are situational.
Yeah.
You know, there isn't, like, we can't make these hard and fast rules that are outside of what the Bible has required of us.
Right.
And then try to bind those things on people.
And then also, you know, judging with righteous judgment forces us to think about the situation. Maybe I'm reiterating, but it's you know, when we look at our brother or sister in Christ and we see, well, maybe they're late. Maybe something. Maybe we notice something that maybe they've done that we wouldn't do. You know, we need to take a step back, and we need not to backbite each other, but take a step and try to understand the situation and to make that righteous judgment. If there's an issue that needs to be handled, then of course we do that one to another.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, if I start skipping services because I want to go fish, now we got a problem, right?
Right.
You know, because...
Right. The first thing, you know, when one of the brethren doesn't show up on a Sunday morning, the first thought is concern.
Yeah. Are they sick? Something wrong?
And that's most likely, you know, where your mind will go is they're sick. But, you know, when you think of people such as the Pharisees, when you think of the Jews of the day in Christ's time, very many of them might have gone into a negative place right away.
Yeah. A guy we both know, he'll say, you know, somebody will call him to say, do I have to be here at every service? And he'll go, that's the wrong question. He goes, it's, do you want to? Do you want to be here? Yeah. That's actually the right question. Do you want to be here? Yeah.
There have been times in the distant past in my life where I would have made that argument that it doesn't tell me I have to be there in the evening for the evening services, but
it doesn't. But do you want
to? The more that I read and learn and study, and the more I want to be with those people. It pains me not. I mean, these past weeks where it was impossible for me to get out of the house when I was sick. It pains me that I was not able to gather with the saints.
Yeah, and we need that. I mean,
it's a shot in the arm. It's a recharge.
It is. It's you know, John and I do this podcast over about 4 months a year. We do the whole year's of podcasts, and when we're done, it's like there's a hole in my life for like a month. You know, it takes up because I'm so used to like all of this, you know, getting together and studying, and I enjoy it. And then when we quit doing it, it's like, oh man.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's the way it works. So let's see here. We have 5 minutes. Where did we stop at? Oh, okay. Okay, we stopped at verse 24.
Oh, you did.
Yeah. So maybe we can get. You know what? Maybe we'll just stop here, and we'll pick up on the next thing. I think that's a good place to stop. So.
Well then, thanks for joining in.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.